My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm your first friend in Alaska, and today we're going to be doing a market update for what's going on in Anchorage. Now, for those who've been watching, Anchorage is the largest city in Alaska, but ironically enough, this is not the place where most of the real estate has been bought and sold lately. That is the Mat-Su Valley. But still, Anchorage is important because this is a place where obviously most people in the state do live. And today we're going to be talking about the single family, the condo, and the multifamily markets. Before we do so, make sure you give this video a like, subscribe, and do all that stuff because it really does help this channel. And let's go and get on with today's video. First thing we are going to look at is what is going on as far as the inventory in the single family asset class in Anchorage. And what we see is that this time last year, for the month of January, the month where we have the most complete data right at the moment, we see that this time last year, there was about 198 properties available on the market. This year, there's about 217. So seeing a very small uptick in the inventory. Not a whole lot of change as far as the inventory goes though, because what we would usually expect around this time of year, probably right around like the 570 to about 600 homes available is what we would expect to see. So we're still continuing to see small inventory. It's within the margin of increase or decrease. So not a whole lot of change year over year, but any uptick in inventory we can get is definitely welcomed. Next, what we see is that the number of properties that have actually sold went from about 115 last year to 117 this year. So not a whole lot of change there one way or the other, which that kind of just is what it is. Not really expecting to see a whole lot of shifting there. About 117 is kind of within the norm of what we would expect. Normally, we'd expect to see anywhere from about 106 to about 170. So 117, that's kind of about where we would expect to be. Next, what we see is that the average sold price went from about $510,000 this time last year to date, to about $520,000 this year, which means we've seen about a 2% increase for the year to date. Now, do keep in mind, this is an average sold price, and also this is year to date, and the day where we have the most complete data is January. So we're really not going off of a whole lot here. I kind of suspect we're probably closer to about 3, maybe 4% appreciation once it's all said and done. But for right now, we're seeing about a 2% increase for average sold price for homes in Anchorage, and probably not going anywhere. It's probably not going to be going down anytime soon. We'll talk more about that in the summary though. Next thing I want to look at is what's going on in the condo market. Now for condos, we see that this time last year, there were about 71 condos available on the market. This year, we're seeing about 107. So we do see a pretty sizable increase for the number of condos that are available compared to the year before. But if we go historically, we would expect to see anywhere from about 300 to maybe about 350 condos available on the market. So yes, it is going up. It's not going up by as much as we would like to see if we're trying to get back to the inventory that we had prior to COVID, but that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Next, what we see is the number of condos that actually sold went from 55 last year to 53 this year. So seeing a slight downtick just a little bit. This is about normal for what we would expect to see for number of condos that are selling, because keep in mind, inventory is still way down from where it was, but we do see that the number of condos that usually get sold is right around like 50 or 60. So being at about 53, that still shows a high demand for condos, because when interest rates are what people perceive as being higher, they are going to be looking at options like condos. So we would expect to see, relative to the inventory we have, seen an uptick in the demand, if that makes any sense. Now, looking at the average sold price for condos, we see the average sold price went from about $278,000 to about $308,000 this year to date. And that means we're seeing about a 10% increase for the average sold price. I don't necessarily think we've seen that much of a run on the condos. I think that probably has more to do with the type of condos that are coming on the market. We might have more luxury type of properties becoming available, and those ones are selling. And so we're seeing this big jump. I Don't know for sure, but I think at the end of the year, once everything's in and it's not just January, we are going to see that it's probably going to be not quite 10%. I could be wrong. I'm not expecting the average sold price for condos across the board to jump by 10%. Let's go and take a break here real quick. For those of you who've been watching for a little bit, you do know that I host a podcast called the Alaskan Journey Podcast, where I interview folks who have recently moved up here and really kind of pull the veil back a little bit and see what it's like living here in Alaska from the perspective of people who actually do live up here. And this is the completely non-varnished perspective from people who actually do live up here. And it's not just me going to be talking about it either. So if that's something that would benefit you, do make sure you go check that out. It'll either be on the YouTube channel or it's going to be on the, if you're just looking for something for just the audio, go check out the audio only section. Down below, we'll have a link to the podcast. Now, let's go and finish up today's video. The last asset class we're going to look at today is the multifamily market. Now, the multifamily market, it's kind of interesting over in Anchorage because this is where the most people live. And there's also some things about investing in Anchorage that may or may not be conducive to maximizing the most you can get for it. We'll call me off air and we can talk about that a little bit more. But for right now, we're seeing that the inventory went up slightly. I believe it went from 59 this time last year to 67 for the month of January, where we have the most complete data for the number of multifamily properties that are actually available. Now, keep in mind, going up just a little bit there, and any little bit it goes up, I'll take it. It's welcome. But we're still a long ways off from what we would normally see, because about this time of year and years past, we would expect to see about 100, 120, maybe even up to 130. So the fact that we're just at 67, that's still an improvement, but we've still got a ways to go if we're trying to get back to the inventory that we had before. Now, we're looking at the number of multifamily properties that have actually sold. We see that this time last year there were 18, and this year it is 16. Now, that's more or less, even though it looks like there's a dip there, that's not necessarily a sign that the demand is suddenly falling out the bottom or anything like that. Really about anywhere from 16 to about 20, even prior to COVID, selling for this time of year is about normal. So the fact that we're still getting those number of sales happening, even though the inventory is about half of what it was before, does indicate that there is still a pretty high demand for multifamily properties in Anchorage. All right, last but not least, we see the average sold price went from about $587,000 this time of year last year to about $581,000 this year. So that does mean that we have in fact seen a bit of a decrease by about 0.99% of the average sold price. Do keep in mind though, this is only looking at the month of January, and it's not the entire year. And also, any time you're dealing with multifamily properties, it includes everything from the duplex all the way up to the big commercial 50-unit property out there that's going to be selling for millions. There's always just that variability in there, and we're just not going to really probably have a good sense for where it's at until we've had at least a couple of months here. But for right now, seeing a bit of a downtick from what we saw the year before. Keep in mind though, prior to that in 2023, average sold price this time of year was about $501,000. And now it's $581,000. So, you're going to see a little bit of fluctuation like back and forth, but all in all, we do see the trend is going upwards for multifamily properties in Anchorage. Now, let's go and do the summary real quick. Now, I've never been the one saying that the bottom's about to fall out of the market and this is the end and everybody panic, and I think that's still probably going to be the case moving forward here. What I am anecdotally feeling is that a lot of people have a sense that the market is getting better, and while they don't like the interest rates, they've kind of just accepted these are just what they are, and it's time to just deal with it and move on. So I'm finding more and more buyers that are jumping in and getting active and competing for these properties. It's not the market that we had back in 21 though, where it was just absolutely insane and everybody lost their ever-living mind, and it was very stressful. That's not the market that we're in. But the main thing for sellers is just to know that it is still a seller's market, but you do have to be smart. And if you're just throwing something against the wall and just asking any old price and just expecting to get it. I wouldn't necessarily expect that. Reality is going to bring you back down to earth. So, that's kind of my 2 cents there. If you're looking at getting into the market in the near future, I'm just going to say it. I'm a real estate broker and I could help you do that. Make sure you reach out to me. Let's talk and let's make that happen. For those of you who are investors out there, biggest thing, just make sure your numbers actually do balance out and you keep enough of a margin in there where you can do the inevitable repairs that are going to come up. Like, it's not if, it's when. But that's about all I have for this time. If you have any other questions about real estate in Anchorage, reach out to me. Be happy to help, and we'll see you next time.